The word of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the day of King Uzziah of Judah, in the day of King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, "The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds wither, and the top of Carmel dries up. Seek God and not evil, that you may live, and so the Lord, the God of hosts, will be with you, just as you have said. Hate evil and love good, and establish justice in the gate. It may be that the Lord, the God of hosts, will be gracious to the remnant of Joseph. I hate you. I despise your festivals. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the offerings of well-being of your fatted animals, I will not look upon. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Now, I want to just read the last couple of lines again. This is a different translation. This is The Word from the Street by Rob Lacey. And I like what he did here because it kind of makes it, I think, a little more obvious what God is saying in these lines. "Oh, and your songs, just shut up. They're doing my head in. If I hear one more tambourine, I'm going to scream. What I want to hear is the roaring river of justice sweeping through your towns. What I want is for the right things you do to wash away the dry, hard, crusted buildup of evil." Having grown up in a certain time in the church, I can understand what God means when God said, if I hear one more tambourine, I'll scream. But I'm also now going to begin my sermon. Did everybody get we had an extra sheet. Did most people get these? Yeah, okay. Well, if you didn't, then hopefully people can share. Because this has 2 sides, and on one side is a song I'm going to ask you to sing at the end of the sermon. It's really part of the sermon. But I'm also going to begin, there's a poem on here, and I'm going to begin reading that poem. It's called Good Bones, and it's by Maggie Smith. Not the actress Maggie Smith, but the poet Maggie Smith. And Maggie Smith wrote, "Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in the lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real dump chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful." I'll tell you, in the spirit of full disclosure, that there is an expletive deleted from this poem. And if you want to know it without my edit, you can Google Maggie Smith and you can find out. But I didn't, it was too much for church. So, and I hope you don't mind, you may have noticed that I had decided to sit down today. I decided to sit down. And I don't know exactly what to say. But I have to tell you that even on the way over here today, I had a strong sensation that my sermon was all wrong. All wrong. And which is why I told you to pay attention to the children's sermon. Because it was much better. That is not written down here. But I felt a certain burden today about having to preach. I know I get paid, and I get paid well to come and do this, so I'm not complaining about that. But it was still a certain burden. And I don't usually feel that way, to be honest. If anything, it's actually rather the opposite for me. When I get up here before you, I usually find it rather energizing. But this has been a difficult week. Even before we met for the Bible study on Wednesday, and it got worse after that, I found it more and more difficult to come up with something to say to you this morning. Now, my wife Patricia passed along that poem that I opened with reading this morning, and I know it's a dark poem. But these are dark times. And when Amos preached, it was a dark time. His imagery is dark and threatening. The Lord roams among his people, roaring like a lion. Earthquakes, the land is drying up. It's a dark time. In the Bible study on Wednesday, we talked about this passage from Amos, but we also talked, as we always do, and I highly recommend these Wednesday Bible studies. They are wonderful and hilarious at the same time. But we have a lot of fun. But we had maybe less fun this week because we talked in a general way about what I was feeling about having to preach in a time when something terrible has happened. Now, something terrible has happened. We know that. And you say, well, which one? Probably. Yeah, I know. That's what it's come down to. Which one? Well, I have particularly in mind that last Sunday morning, and it was about just at this time, a gunman, a lone man, carried out the deadliest mass shooting in Texas history, killing 25 people and an unborn child at First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs near San Antonio, Texas. And I don't believe that any of us, not a single one of us, can come near to imagining the horror of what happened in those few moments, and it happened very, very quickly. And also, this weekend, it's never a coincidence in God's calendar. Also this weekend, we remember the veterans of military service. You know, I guess the official Veterans Day, it's hard to know by all the ads on television selling me automobiles and lazy boy recliners, but that the official Veterans Day was yesterday, I guess. And that was originally to commemorate the casualties of World War I. And World War I formally ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, when the armistice with Germany went into effect. Now, I had to look this up, but the total number of casualties, military and civilian, in World War I were more than 41 million. Over 18 million deaths and 23 million wounded, ranking it among the deadliest conflict in human history. Now, if you were not in those awful battles, I don't believe you could imagine them. And I can tell you, in fact, no one is left who can. Florence Beatrice Green died on the 4th of February in 2012, and she was an English woman who was the last surviving veteran of the First World War from any country. She was a member of the Women's Royal Air Force. They are all gone now. Our history, both ancient and modern, is a grim affair. And today, we have almost instantaneous coverage of the latest horror I went home and watched it on CNN, and they had their panel of pundits already assembled, and they would cut to various political and public figures, and I heard it over and over. We all have, and I have said it myself, my thoughts and prayers go out to the people of wherever, fill in wherever the latest horror has occurred. My thoughts and prayers. I say it, people say it. But for me, what made this so burdensome is a deep feeling that God has had enough. God doesn't want to hear my thoughts and prayers over and over again. Amos heard this news before I did. God said to Amos, I despise your festivals. I take no delight in your assemblies. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps. God doesn't want it. God is appalled by my empty prayers. Our world is covered in blood, and God does not want our blood. God does not want our blood. I don't think God ever did. But Elisha Hoffman, I said this to my wife, Elisha Hoffman, she said, huh? I said, well, you do know who Elisha Hoffman was. Well, because Elisha Hoffman actually was a congregational minister. And he wrote the song Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. That's one we all know. I love that one. It was played at my ordination. But back in 1878, he wrote another hymn. We don't sing this very often. I don't even think it's maybe in the New Century Hymnal. But it has a verse in it, and you washed in the blood, and the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? It was supposed to be once for all. I believe that Jesus' death was supposed to be transformative. It was supposed to transform us, to change my heart, to change our hearts. Las Vegas, Texas, so much blood, so much, and not a drop seems to be able to transform us. Jesus' death was and is transformative. Justice, righteousness, an ever-flowing stream. It opened the floodgates of grace, that of which Amos prophesies. But let the justice roll down like waters, like an ever-flowing stream. Did we build a dam? Did we turn off the tap? God has given into our hands the power to transform humanity. We have to blow the dam up that is stopping a flood of justice and righteousness. It's not that complicated. I can speak, I can act, I can make my ways clear for the waters of justice and righteousness to roll down. We can, really we can. Our gospel is not a lie. It is not a lie. So we can do this, and we can never forget that. We can never forget that. It's going to take more than thoughts and prayers. That's why you have your sheet this morning. I added an extra hymn. I sprung this also on Diana, who is the most gracious music director. And I didn't think you'd mind. You know this tune, and I think the tune is called Wally Wally. It's the Welsh tune. And on your handout, it shows you the notes on one side, and then the words that we're going to sing are next to it. We're going to sing the words, If We Just Talk of Thoughts and Prayers. Join with me, please, will you, in this hymn.